Okay folks, and welcome to the first of 3 video playthroughs of games fought in the ADLG Southern League one-day competition in Oxford. Thank you to Jesse for hosting it, and to Jesse's kids, I think, for making us some lovely soup and sandwiches. That's the most important bit out of the way. But for this, the theme was in the age of Mithradates, themed around sort of Mithridatic armies and that sort of era. And I chose to use these chaps, who are the Spanish. I'd used Spanish before at Brixham a year or so ago. I've got a lot of these Corvus Belli metal figures. I think I've got 2 DBA army packs, the thing they used to do, sort of a box set, and a few other bits and pieces, and I've turned them into an Art de la Guerre army with a few additions as well. Last time out in Brixham, which there's probably a link to if you look on my site for the Brixham 20, probably be 2020, I tried using it with Sartorius, with the Roman commander, the better commander, and a block of proper steady legionaries, which wasn't massively effective, it must be said. They tended to get run over, and I think there weren't quite enough legionaries to be legionaries, and their steadiness kind of contrasted with the barbarian attackingness of the rest of the army. So it did just get a bit disjointed, and it didn't really kind of work. So this time I decided to try and use the army with the Celtiberians, the heavy infantry, the elite heavy infantry, impetuous, just to give me a solid block of stuff to run things over. And I guess with it being a Mithridatic period, I was kind of hoping to meet lots of pikemen and spearmen as well, for which those sort of impetuous heavy infantry are, well, they treat it like catnip. They're great for going through it. So that was kind of the theory of the army. It did also give me a chance to get a lot of these guys out on table with their kind of mostly red shields and things like that, and put them together. And also these chaps, these were the Celtiberians. This is some sort of second-hand figures from clubmate Clive that I'd kind of assembled when I was helping sell his collection on, which was about a year-long project and raised a huge amount of money for his family. There were odds and sods of these figures in almost every box that I looked, so it would be taking a car boot full from the storage sheds where all his stuff had been kept, sorting it out, and every single time I did that and put loads and loads of lots on eBay, there'd always be 2 or 3 or 4 of these figures kind of mixed in. So I kept sort of putting them to one side, and by the end of a year, and by the end of, well, 15, 16 trips, I think, I kind of had about 5 or 6 bases of these guys. I think in reality they're probably a mix of Etruscans and Spanish, but the shield designs are cute, hand painted. They're old Donington figures, which are looking a bit tired now, but with these shield designs and wargaming distances, that's what you see. So these have become kind of either heavy infantry, kind of Etruscan pre-Roman guys, or they become the Celtiberian infantry as well, and that's what they played as this weekend. This was their first outing as a proper coherent based up set of soldiers. So this was the army. This was the army I took. Celtiberian Initiative 2, standard camp, plains and mountains being the terrain, and you can see what it does on the tin, really. Not too much combat, well, not too much command and control with a competent and 2 competents and an ordinary, but 2 commands which are just very, very solid. 5 heavy foot, 2 of which are elite, and the same thing here. It just is a mirror image of these 2 Celtiberian commands. So you're putting 10 heavy foot elite across the table, or well, 10 heavy foot of which 4 are elite and the others are not, across the table. That should in theory be able to punch through spears and pikemen, and it should also, if needed with this one, hold off some cavalry potentially. This command is bigger, so this one obviously sits straight in the middle. That's got nothing to protect its flanks really. It's got the legendary Cart of Doom, but also this one on the flanks has got a few odds and sods to fill an open flank with a couple of cavalry, a couple of light horse, a javelin man. It can occupy a little bit of terrain, so that extends on one flank. And on the other flank, using the Lusitanians to give some medium swordsmen, the people that you do expect to see in this army. Again, a big command of 6 of these medium swordsmen plus a javelin man 7 to allow you to either put some in ambush, or hopefully swamp anything else that you're going to meet in rough terrain there. So, and it's still a pretty pokey army at 28 units. That's still pretty big, so it can take a lot of punishment. So let's have a look how it kind of set up in the first army, and this was against a Mithradatic army as well that's got a couple of cataphracts, it's got some spearmen, it's probably got some imitation legionaries. But looking at the terrain setup, you've got a field, you've got a plantation, you've got another plantation. It's a nice narrow line up and fight gap for, as you can see, the Celtiberians, the elite ones here and here, and then all the other ones lined up together just to go forwards and fight kind of whatever's there. They don't want to fight the cavalry or the cataphracts, but they definitely want to be fighting this lot. I'm kind of refusing this flank a little bit, although it looks like they've got a match with my cavalry and their cavalry. And here, this terrain looks like there's some Thracians or something there for these guys to run through. So let's have a quick look at the enemy list here for the Mithradatics. So this was it. As you can see, or as we already looked at, a couple of Pontic horsemen, the cataphracts elite, very difficult for my army to deal with. I think this is the command that's on the left because it's got the Thracians. A couple of light cavalry, light infantry, and the two Thracians to go into the woods. They should be outmatched by my guy. In the middle, you've got 4 heavy spearmen. They're looking they're probably feeling a little bit speed bumpy, but 2 imitation legions which can stop my guys cold, and a couple of javelin men as well to skirmish out the way. And then there's an Armenian ally. I think this is on the right as we looked at it just then. 2 elite cataphracts, 2 horse archers. They really don't have space to operate anymore, just because the terrain's been sort of closed down. An archer and a couple of horse archers. So there's some nasty stuff. 4 elite cataphracts is not good, but there's some good stuff for me to hit as well, the heavy spearmen. So it's, I guess, a question of getting into these guys in the middle before the 4 cataphracts can do enough damage to mine, which is still a pretty big army. So let's look at how this game plays out. So here's the guys ready to go. And first up, the Lusitanians make a rush for the plantation, flushing out some enemy light infantry who are probably hiding there. And you can see the enemy, the Pontic army, Mithridatic army, sorry, has tried to shove some light horse down by the side of a waterway, which I must have got on to narrow the table as well, because I think I recognise it. It must be mine. They're going to try and sneak down there. These guys may well have other things to say about that. The couple of Thracians haven't really started, so I've got into this terrain, which is where I want these 3 guys to be. And as you can see, the rest of the Lusitanians are now moving up. They've turned around, they've pinned these guys back against the edge of the waterway. The water doesn't extend to the water. The whole piece of cloth is classed as the waterway. This is just sort of cosmetic. So suddenly these guys have got nowhere to come back to, and they're being suddenly going to be overwhelmed by lots of infantry. But the Thracians and the javelin are coming up, and I've only got a couple because I've detached 1 over here, and there's still a couple here of the five Lusitanians to take them on. So we managed to catch 1 the light foot in there, jumping people behind it. Must have been some good command and control to allow them to do that. But this is still a serious force coming up, so I do have to dispatch these quickly and then get the numbers back together for that one. In the middle, the 2 armies are kind of crunching forwards towards each other, a big solid line of heavy infantry ready to kind of take on whatever they can. They're looking at these guys as the target. They're looking at these guys as not the target. Kind of good these chaps are held back, but the 2 cavalry bow and 2 light horse bow in the Armenian ally, they're not wildly better than my medium cavalry in this army either. So the cataphracts have got a lot to do. There's a lot of guys to run over for the cataphracts before they get into this mix. And actually, yeah, there's some, just worth saying, there's some very, very old, like classic minifigs figures on the opposition side here. Really nice to see them kind of coming out. I think you do see that particularly with the one-day competitions for ADLG. There are people bringing out armies that they've found they've got enough troops for, because it's the smaller format, and they can put out. Maybe they wouldn't do it for a 2-day competition, 5 events, but giving these chaps a run out over 1 day, nipping home at 5 o'clock, good way to get these old armies onto the table as well. So what's happening here then? The 2 lines have clashed, but from my point of view, there's some great stuff going on here. One of the 2 cataphracts here isn't fighting anyone, unless it's wiped them out. These guys have just hung back and let the front line go in, and it looks like these two are not quite engaged yet either. They are going to be there. They're going to hit my my Celtiberians at some point and should probably chew them up. But what I want to do is start rolling dice against all these spearmen and legionaries as soon as possible to knock them over before these two guys have got a chance to start chewing up the end of my line. So this is all about timing. And again, to neutralise these, my medium cavalry have made a play to try and get into the bowmen, the bow-armed cavalry in this Armenian command as well. And I just want to stop these and these fighting for as long as possible, because I'm losing against them, but hopefully I win against the guys in the middle. What's happening over here? So all of these Lusitanians now have ganged up and decided now's the right time, with overlaps, to take on these light horse. It's a bit more of a struggle than it should be, but the light horse just can't get away. And with my army being bigger, taking out 2 light horse out of the enemy army is going to make a dent without actually having to engage many of their capital troops. So it's a good use of resources, and the Thracians are not, even if this is a bit of a wash, I don't get my sort of warband impact against steady swordsmen if they stand to receive me. So this does make this a bit of a wash. Maybe the advantage is slightly with the Thracians, but they're already not going to be coming out and doing anything. If I can pick these guys off quickly and then reinforce it, I can stop them and maybe start to push them back. So here's the line of scrimmage. So that's 2 hits for me, unsurprisingly. The cataphracts with an overlap taking 2 hits on the end. There's a single hit there. You can see it's got a brown edge. That one's got a yellow edge. That's my markers. And here you've got a couple of 2s. These must be the spearmen because there's more of them. There are 4 in that kind, and a 3 there as well. So furious charge. I win and I get an extra hit. So smacked into them there. And it looks like the legionaries here are doing holding more than holding their own. But there's already, this looks like this is a potential hole, and these guys are these 2 are my elite ones. These are also elite ones, so my best troops are in combat exactly where they want to be. So what's happening here? The Thracians are giving my guys a bit of a rough handling. These light horse are doing remarkably well. Again, giving me some trouble here, but there's already a couple dead there, and this guy's now time must be surely limited. So this bit of terrain is looking like some attrition for the enemy army here. Yeah, it could have gone better for them. I think they allowed themselves, or they thought they'd sneak past, but the speed of my advance into there kind of did for them and trapped them there. So yeah, they are in a bit of trouble, that remaining light horseman for sure. So what happens here is we just start to gang up on it even more and start the war of attrition. But the more regular drilled Thracians and more troops coming in from here. Unusual to see light horse rushing into terrain, but if it allows the Thracians to get that little extra benefit, they're disadvantaged in terrain, but they're only counting as an overlap, so that doesn't really disadvantage them at all. But it's brave. It means these guys are just waiting for the command and control to send them in there and give those a right kicking. So again, what's happening here in the middle? I think there's a gap broken through there. There's a few more red markers there. These cataphracts are now in at this end of the line. Very bad for my guys, 2 hits there. These are still holding up with their 2 hits. It looks like I've lost somebody there, but this is still starting this combat now after these are into sort of round 2, round 3 of combat and haven't taken any hits in this strip of it. Is pretty much as good as it can get. I can't avoid fighting some of the cataphracts, but the weight of battle is against these guys here. So what's happening? Yep, big hole in front of the cataphracts. My guys are still engaged, which sort of makes it difficult for these to swing around. And there's still a target for these cataphracts here. They've got to step forward, they've got to turn, these guys can charge them. And here comes the burning cart of doom, which its mission is really to attack cataphracts. That's what it does. So this is kind of still the right balance with those red markers behind the enemy spearmen. So here comes the cart of doom, and my guys stepping up. The cataphracts have moved forwards. Let's see how the cart of doom does in that sort of nil-nil combat, ignoring the armor, going straight in. This amazing amazing piece of modeling, which is basically I've got some burning cotton wool type stuff, and I've just sort of stuck it on the back of a Gallic chariot. But from this angle, I'm sure it's a burning cart. It's not too bad, even if these old minifigs guys aren't that impressed by it. And look, bang, there you go. There's the Celtiberians, and some more of the normal infantry just crushing through the middle of these enemy spearmen. And this other spearman unit looks like it's in a whole world of trouble as well. I'm now able to move some light infantry back. This is one of the things I think ADL simulates really, really well. You get your skirmishers out front, they fall back, but then as the battle breaks down, they come in and join in with combats and give your troops that extra little edge, which I think is pretty historical actually. Penny packets of skirmishers returning to harass the flanks of enemy. These guys are starting to struggle. There's a red marker, there's another single hit marker there. They're obviously getting beaten up by the legionaries, but these legionaries are now looking in quite a lot of trouble. That horseman has been dispatched. There's a big-ish pile of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dead units over there now for the enemy army, and these guys are still holding their own. I've probably taken more casualties than I expected there, but now there's a chance to start to rally them, and swapping, getting 16 hit points there plus whatever's on table has got to be putting a big dent in a well-drilled Greek successor army for sure. No, these aren't the Armenians, these are the Pontic cataphracts are starting to sweep up and starting to help their legionaries, their imitation legionaries. These guys haven't really got a target now. They've run over the people, but it looks like there's still a hit on that legionary there. They're holding up the end of the line, but not particularly well. And here again, they've kind of broken through. They've done some sort of swapping around, moving cavalry here, getting cataphracts into my cavalry to chew them up. Those cavalry are dead. They've been hit in the flank. That's a little bit of a problem here, but I'm much happier in some ways with that cataphract killing off my cavalry, and now it's sort of out of the game really. It's not going to come back and harass my infantry who are still holding up pretty well against the rest of these cataphracts. So it looks like we're getting sort of towards the end game now. These guys must have been kind of lurking somewhere at the back, but the cataphracts have knocked people out in front of the legions. But that huge spear, 4 wide spear gap here has allowed my Celtiberians to turn onto the flanks of the Roman legionaries as well. They're still holding out against this cataphract. All my cavalry have been wiped out, so there's quite a lot of attrition going on here. But as with the light horse who are over here, with all of these spearmen, there's a much more attrition for the enemy army. And even so, there's still sort of troops, the javelin men in reserve, a long way away, looking to see what's happening as this battle carries on. My light horse can block these guys from coming and doing anything too meaningful as well before the game ends, I suspect. And over here in this command, you may remember, as well as the 2 Thracians, there was I think a javelin man. He's finally run out of table and been caught by a Lusitanian who's just been chasing him across the field and done quite a bit of damage to him already. And as these guys at the right hand end of my line have been holding up that cataphract and the Armenian bowmen, it has finally, command and control's finally worked for this irregular crazy army and allowed these guys to swing round into the back and do a lot of damage to this cataphract and start to knock this army pretty close, or exceedingly close to defeat. So I think we're probably almost at the end of things here. There's still the legions there. They managed to turn around and fight, but they're still taking hits. This cataphract is in a lot of trouble. He's struggling now that he's there. It's all about this big hole and how it's allowed these guys to turn around and exploit it. Well, it looks like my Lusitanians have lost out against the Thracians there as well, so that's not quite as good as it should be. And look, here they go. There's a lot of carnage going on. Let's see what was happening before. So yeah, the cataphracts are there. Have they burst through these Romans? Maybe in fact the Romans have. What it actually looks like is the Romans finally did for these guys, with the cataphracts turning into the flank. The cataphracts have followed up. That's allowed them to hit the cataphracts in the flank. There's just all sorts of nonsense going on here. It's an absolute scrum of these 2 armies going real toe to toe, and tough as it is to get them in the flank completely. So bosh, but there it goes. There is the cataphract hitting the flank. It's just got exhausted by doing all this thing. And these guys are triumphant, much to the surprise of these legions who were relying on the cataphracts to protect them. Infantry being chased away, and I suspect that is it. And these are the guys who did the damage, the heavy infantry, and it's a great victory for the Spanish.